All right, history folks, welcome. Glad you opened this up. What we're doing here is taking a look on our Unit 2 notes sheet, reviewing the three documents that you already pretty much mastered on an assignment called Who Said That, and then taking a couple of vocabulary words down. This stuff is just going to help us long term, not a lot of new information, but want to make sure that everybody has access to it. So here we have, here we have a classic picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware River. We're going to talk about why this photo is not, or this painting is not accurate in a little bit. But today what we're going to do is you need to find this document called Notes Sheet Unit 2 American Revolution, right? So you can either use that Control F shortcut, right? Or you can find it October 3rd is when we started this note sheet. And we're going to just fill in a couple of key pieces here. Letter E. And then we're going to mostly work on section 3 that says the most important documents, right? So that's where we're going to be working off this note sheet, and I just want to give you some of this information to help kind of paint the full picture of the American Revolution. So we already talked about the Olive Branch Petition. We've got a picture of a dove with the olive branch, which is just a reminder that this term and this idea is a symbolism of peace, which makes it easy to remember that this petition was written by the Second Continental Congress and asked King George basically for a fresh start. And the way that they wanted to get to that fresh start, even though the Boston Massacre had already happened, even though a bunch of protests and boycotts had already happened, they said, listen, the problem has really been with your ministers. We don't have any beef with you, King. Let's get back on the right path. From listening to the song from Hamilton and doing some of the reading, hopefully you know that King George said, this is not going to be real simple. You're going to be back, but I might have to send some ships to convince you. And so how he responded was not say, give him a hug and get back together. He blocked the colonial ports and he called the colonies a rebel, which gave him permission to kill their friends and family if necessary, as the song suggested. Common Sense is this second document that was very powerful in changing people's minds. That's why I've got this weird looking alien thing down here. Common Sense was a pamphlet, which is the term they used back then, basically for magazines, right? This was a document, right? Something that went viral, except it was all paper-based. So it was a widely popular pamphlet by this guy, Thomas Paine. And again, I know this is review, but I want to make sure everybody has an access, a way to keep all this stuff written down. This document was a passionate argument, not just for independence, but to reject this idea that a king could do what the king is doing. Reject the British monarchy. And the reason that it was so viral, the reason that it was so popular, is that he wrote it in a style that was an exciting style. It was easy to understand. Not many people went to college back then. Not many people graduated from high school back then. So you had to write in a way that was easy for a lot of people to understand. And one of the ways he did it is he wrote it using some images from the Bible, which a lot of Americans at the time had read, or a lot of colonists, I should say. Here are the other two key points about Common Sense. So we talked about the arguments that he used, both emotional, right, using symbolism from the Bible, and like this quote up here, we have it in our power to begin the world over again. But he also used economic arguments. He said America, this continent, could become an economic giant if we're allowed to trade with other countries. So he appealed to their piggy banks or their pocketbooks, and he appealed to their hearts. Okay, but here is something that's controversial. It's never simple. Some people, even some patriots, feared Thomas Paine's writing because it pushed for this idea called egalitarianism, which is real equality. Not just having an equal opportunity, but having an equal setup of society, right? So it'd be like Mark Zuckerberg. He could run for president, or he could campaign for a president, but he's probably not going to campaign for a president that's going to radically change America, because Mark Zuckerberg, who founded Facebook and is a billionaire, kind of already likes the way the system runs, at least parts of it, because it makes him a billionaire. The same thing was true for a lot of rich people in the colonies. They were scared that Paine's writing was going to push the quote-unquote regular people for even more equality, sharing things like land and money in a way that the rich people weren't really comfortable with. So Thomas Paine was a little controversial, and that brings us to this big question here of what is egalitarianism, which you can find on your note sheet. Letter E, just above the three most important documents. And this is a big conversation that still goes on today. How much equality should the United States have, right? Bernie Sanders, who ran for president last fall, really pushes this idea of egalitarianism. He kind of has inherited this Thomas Paine idea, the principle that all people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities. There are people in America who suggest that everyone in America should automatically get a paycheck every 2 weeks, no matter what they do, to try to make sure that there are equal opportunities. Some people would say that's not very American, but other people say, since Thomas Paine, people have been asking for that. So this is a big question, big controversy, important word. Common sense pushed this idea of egalitarianism. Some people loved it, some people did not. And then the last one is the Declaration of Independence, of course the most famous. It's written by Thomas Jefferson. It's hugely influenced by John Locke. We already know that. Just make sure you have this two-piece thing here, the short-term goal and the long-term goal. The short-term goal was to list the ways the king had failed and declare independence. The Declaration of Independence obviously was supposed to declare independence and also explain why the king had messed up. So it was a long list of ways the king had made a mistake. The long-term goal of the Declaration of Independence was to support this idea of inalienable rights. Remember, that's the idea that God gives everyone a gift bag of rights, and to explain when it's okay to kick out a government, right? So you can't just kick out a government because you're unhappy with their law or you don't like the president, but there are certain times when it's okay to totally kick out the government, and it's when the government doesn't protect these inalienable rights. So they had to make an argument. Otherwise, every 6 months you could have a revolution. And they said, no, it's not that simple. You can't just kick out a government whenever. But if you read the Declaration of Independence, it's essentially an explanation on when it's okay to kick out a government and why King George had done those things. And then, unfortunately, we also talked about how Thomas Jefferson was essentially bullied or pushed into deleting the parts talking about how bad slavery was, because 2 of the colonies said, we won't sign the Declaration if you talk about how bad slavery is, because we need slavery to make money. The last vocabulary word here, and this is a little trick. I need you to add this Continental Army to the notes sheet. So what you want to do is you want to go to the notes sheet, click in the egalitarian box, and then just say insert row below, insert row below. Do that twice, right? If you're really like me and you like things to look all pretty and even, okay? Then you can get rid of the color in one box. We'll make it a double E, and we'll say Continental Army. We're going to use this term a lot, and I just want to make sure that I've given you the definition to it. It's not a trick. It's not a big deal. It's pretty easy. But the Continental Army is the Patriot Army, the army of George Washington that got established by the Continental Congress. We'll talk more about this, but you also should know that militias also supported the Patriot cause. Militias are these part-time soldiers, but the Continental Army got commitments of 1 to 3 years. So people were full-time soldiers. That was their job. The militias are a little bit different. So what you need to know is the Continental Army is the Patriot Army. It's George Washington's army. And this is key here. They didn't usually look like this. They were kind of a dirty, mucky bunch because the fighting was so hard. And they were running and hiding. And they didn't often look real sharp like this. But nonetheless, they were led by George Washington. So what I wanted you to do, folks, is come away with just a review of those 3 documents and then these 2 words, the Continental Army and egalitarianism. This really pushes us forward into the war, but you can see that there are issues that we still deal with today. Egalitarianism, military, things like that. So there's this connection. That's why it's worth studying. Thank you.